Now let's implement a chat system with Codicious. There are quite a few ways you can do this, but I would be doing it the simple way. I would be assuming that the messages are a part of the game state, so I would have to include it in our room schema. As a message is a string and all these messages constitute our whole chat among players, so a collection of strings would be stored as an array of strings. So let's include our messages as a collection of strings here. Also, we need to initialize this messages in our constructor. New, as it is a array of string, so we need to use new array schema. As we had seen before, the onCreate method or onCreate event is also used to register callbacks or API contracts between client and server. So open myroom.js and inside onCreate, let's create a callback for sending a message. This should be this dot room dot on message. Let's say the type of message be send message. Inside this block, I need to push the message received into our messages state. So let's do this. This dot messages. Sorry, this dot state dot messages. As messages is a string, so to push a new value, we need to use the push method of the array. As messages is an array, sorry, let's push the new value. Now to handle dynamic strings, I'll be using the dollar notation to concatenate the client's username and the messages or the message sent by him or her. So use backticks and then dollar. This dot state dot players. Now to identify the player, we will be using the client's ID. So this client here is the client that is sending the message. So client dot ID would be giving the ID of this player. Dot username would give the username or name of the player, and then we need to concatenate the message. So dollar, and the message is message, and we are done. Now in our client side, in our game container component, let's create some states. One for a particular message named message. and the initial value would be an empty string, and the other for the whole chat named messages. Initially the whole chat would be an empty array, so let's pass the initial value as an empty array. Let's now create our form to send a message. Let's create a div, and inside this div we need to give an input for the text. Okay, this needs to be a self-closing tag. The default type will be text. Let's give it a class name of form control for bootstrap styling, and the initial value or the value would be that particular message. And when the value is changed, we need to set the state. So on change, set message, v dot target dot value. So the new value would be set in the state. We need to create a button to send the message. Let's show it as send. On click, something should happen. So on click, we should create a function to send the message. Let's name it handle send. We'll be creating it, but first let's style this button. Let's give it some bootstrap class. Okay, btn dash sm, btn primary. Let's now create this function. We need to send the message to the room. So room dot send. The first argument would be the type of message. It is send message. And the second argument would be the actual message. It is message state. Also, when the message has been sent to the server, we need to set it to an empty string again. Now we need to synchronize our messages state from server. For this, in our use effect, room.state dot messages dot when a new message is added, so on add. It also takes an arrow function. So the first parameter would be the actual message, and the second one is the length of the messages array. Let's say len. Inside of this function, we have to set the new messages state. So use set messages, takes an arrow function. The parameter would be the previous state, so previous val, and then return the new state, in which this includes the previous value and the new message, and this will be our new state. Now we just need to render these messages on screen. So let's map on the messages array. For each of the element of the messages array, we need to return a list value. Inside of this map function, we take an arrow function. The first parameter is the actual message. The second is the index value of that message. And we need to return a list value. The value would be the actual message. So let's write inside of curly braces, and let's style it properly, giving some bootstrap classes. The class would be list group item, list dash group dash item, and to uniquely identify each of the message, we need to give each of these list value some key. That would be the index value, and now our messages would be rendered. Let's now check it in the browser. Let's create the room with player 1. See, we are seeing this message or this form to send the message. Let's join another player with the player 2 as the name. Let's now send the message. The player 2 has sent the message hi, and the player 1 is also seeing this message. See, the state is being synchronized between these pairs.